Oh, that was me. Sorry about that. I forgot to mute my mic while I was typing.
Shame on you.
It wouldn't be so bad if it wasn't a mechanical. And hey,
Yeah,
Josh.
I have the same problem. Loud, clacky keyboard.
Yep, roommate hates it.
YouTube stream is up.
Okay, great. Sounds like we're all
I
set to
think it
go
is
here.
anyway. I just got a notification.
Double check with Paul here.
Yeah, just need to post it in Discord for when it goes live.
Yeah, I apologize for a few minutes late today. Paul and I had a very late night working on a project and just stumbling in this morning. Okay, great. I'm glad you were able to make it in this morning. Yeah, I understand. Gonna make sure that the question thingy is set up to the right one. Hopefully it is.
That you handed me, it said the right date. Did we get the stream posted in Discord for everybody to click on that needed it? I didn't have that.
Yeah, can we post the stream in Discord just for reference? But anyway, I guess we'll get started here. So we're live now. So thank you everybody for coming to office hours this week, or technical hours. As usual, there's a floating question mark up at the front. So if you click on that, it'll bring up a little box, and you can enter questions and vote on the questions that you most want to see answered. We usually get to most of them anyway during the hour, but if there's more than we can get to, then that helps prioritize them as what people want to see most. If you are watching from the stream or outside of Science, not logged in, then you can go to sli.do and enter event code 55608, and you should be able to enter and vote on questions through your web browser as well. So just while we're waiting for some questions to come in here, then just start off with hopefully some tentative good news here. We've been in touch with Unity, and they're finally giving us the patch that we need to roll out the tours next week. We'll have to get that patch from them, test it, make sure it actually solves the bug that it's supposed to solve, and if it does, then we think we're in good shape to go ahead and jump the 1B viewer entirely, which we're very excited about. So we'll definitely keep you posted on that, but I'm hoping by next office hours we should be able to say yes, we're doing this, or and we're getting rid of that whole old bit of infrastructure there, and just going with the new shiny. Um, I'm actually wearing a very boring outfit today because I was doing some VR testing, making sure that was all set up for 2B and making sure everything worked well there. Lots of weirdness around that with updating to a whole new version of Unity, and I know that there's been some issues with it in the 2B viewers up till now. So hopefully, starting with 2B48, I was having no problems with my Vive or my Rift. If anybody wants to jump in there and give it a try with their VR headset. I'm not seeing any questions coming in so far. So is everybody uh, able to access that? Um, I'm actually looking. Seem to be missing something on my screen here. Okay. Yeah, I think I just realized that I don't have chat on my screen. see if I can pull it up. Yeah, I'm actually gonna have to change my viewer here real quick because I don't have I'm in a test viewer that has chat disabled, and so I can't actually see the any chat that's going on in the chat box right now. I need to undo that change. All right, I'll be back in just a second.
Okay, I'll just voice it since my keyboard's insane anyway. I see, for those that are making a comment about Karsten, I see Karsten and Cindy floating. But then I'm in the newest test viewer, so. Aha! Now everybody's on the ground. We put the viewer that Josh was commenting on up to preview. Let me see if I can grab that for you guys. So here it is.
Hey everyone, sorry about that.
I was just giving the link to the one that you were talking about.
It should be the same one that's in the question picker from
Preview.
last week. Yeah, sorry about that. Had an experimental change in the viewer to for a client who actually doesn't want chat at all, and I forgot that was in there. So the viewer I was using, I was actually logged in through our development environment and didn't have any chat, so I couldn't read anything that was going on in the assembly chat here. So let me catch up here. So let's see. Question: we do have a question come in? Is there any way to get a keyboard or mouse shortcut for microphone activation, deactivation? Yeah, absolutely. We could put in a voice hotkey. Is actually not a bad idea. We could probably use hotkeys for a lot of other things. I would like to have configurable hotkeys. We really want to expand our settings panel to have more options in it. Oh, there's a profile load there. What profile wasn't loading? Was like individual people's profiles? Because I just clicked on I clicked on Gabby here, and a profile came up in 2B48. Anyway, so yeah, we've got some hopefully a lot of changes coming next week with 2B coming out. It's going to actually enable us to do a lot of stuff that's been kind of buried in the 2B viewer, but we haven't been using because it wouldn't work for people on the 1B viewer. So we're very excited to be able to probably dump that next week and be able to do some other cool stuff. I'd like to, for example, try these office hours once we make the switch over, using like the video screen share system, just to just kind of show everybody how that works and give everybody a chance to play with it. So there's some fun stuff there coming in. We've got more questions coming in here. pressing M or even just typing chatting. If you type M, it will send you to first person view, or ask you to go to first person view. Can this be? It shouldn't do that while you're chatting. It might do it for the browser interface, but like it's not doing it for me if I'm typing into the chat box. So if you have your cursor in an input field someplace like the search box or the chat window or anything like that, it shouldn't be doing it. It should only do it if you're not actively. Yeah, if you can show me an example of a time that's doing it. I realize randomly makes it a little bit difficult, but it's probably not random. There's probably something that that explains it.
I just did it. I just clicked out of the chat box, pressed M, and it popped up. So you know.
Yeah. Well, I mean that's how it's supposed to work. If you're
Yeah.
not in the chat box and you press M, then that goes into mouse look. It's a shortcut key for going to look. But if you have another window actually selected, not just visible, but it has to be selected. So like if the chat box is up, but you click out into the world, then M will go into mouse look. But if you actually click on the chat window, even if you don't have an input box selected, but if you click on that window so that is focused UI element, then M should no longer do that. I'm just testing it here to see if it seems to be working correctly. If you have a situation where you're sure that something is focused, like an input box is focused, or a window is focused, and M still does that, then let us know. File an issue for it on the issue tracker or something, and let us know exactly like, hey, I had this selected, pressing M still was taking me into mouse look, and we can look at it may be something to do with that particular user interface element. Yeah, so that's some in terms of changing and adding more shortcuts. Yeah, I'd like to add a whole shortcut panel to the system settings and make it possible to turn these things off and on, as well as change up what key they're bound to. That's a little bit more complicated in the code, saying use this key instead of that key, but it's certainly possible. And we're actually doing some internal updates to the way our input system works to accommodate some new features that are coming down the line anyway. So as part of that input update that we're doing, we can look at laying the groundwork at least for doing those customized shortcut keys. There's a lot of input stuff, a lot of input management that goes in there, and some of it's pretty straightforward, some of it isn't, some of it's complicated. So it'll just depend on. And don't forget to click on the question mark at the front and enter your questions if you've got questions to ask. I've got to close office hours here at actually on the hour at 1 o'clock because I've got something immediately following afterwards. So we've got about 45 minutes here. Throw at me whatever you got. Let's see. There's I'm really looking forward to being able to tell you guys about all the new stuff that's coming in 2B once we actually get 2B out the door, and start exploring some of those new features that we've been working on. It's just at the moment they're all, like I said, they're all kind of buried because we want to get the basic 2B viewer out first. So I'm hoping future tech hours here, we can actually just pick a feature and just kind of explore those features more in depth. Something I wouldn't mind doing in general, as I know this QA format can be useful if there's questions, but I think it might also be interesting exploring doing more focused QAs from maybe alternating in the future with picking a topic and saying, hey, let's do a deep dive on this one topic versus just kind of scattershotting whatever questions come in. I think both could be useful. Even potentially, once we have the ability to do live screen shares, and we know that everybody here can participate in those live screen shares. It could be very useful to even hold these almost as like instructional or classroom type settings where you guys can come in and say, hey, I've got questions about vehicles. Let's talk about vehicles, and I can actually share my screen and show live Unity to people here in the environment, and we can go over vehicles. You can actually ask questions, see real time changes, and really explore some of those more complicated systems, or even people can say, rather than when is this coming, say, how do I do this, and we can do like live demonstrations of how to hook those up, how to use I know that there's a lot of components in there that a lot of people don't really necessarily know about, and that's entirely our fault. There's so many components. There's literally hundreds of components in the editor pack, and not all of them are documented or documented well, which is something that we've been discussing is essentially hiring some people who, or at least one person whose job is to just full time work on documentation. And we've been talking about how internally how we need somebody that we can just say, write a document on this, and they don't get distracted by anything else. Their job is to document that, get it out there, and make it available. So that's something we want to pursue. But I think it'd be very useful if we had we had those focused deep dives here as well, where we could talk about not just the components, but how to put those components together in cool and interesting ways to accomplish stuff. Eventually open up a whole new, hey, it'd be cool if it did this. Yeah, component of the day would be is a great idea. Like, just maybe even just take 10-15 minutes of each hour and say, hey, we're going to focus on this component, talk about this, how to make it work, what its limitations are, what its features are, what it can do, and that opens up the door to saying, hey, it'd be cool if we could also do this, and maybe that's something that we can there. Yes, that's very true, Gabby, which is the challenge. Anybody who's writing documentation for our system, especially for things like the APA, the Sciencebase, Sciencebase SDK for doing all these Unity stuff, has to be somebody who knows Unity, knows the components, which at the very least means somebody who's an experienced creator on the platform, but really somebody with dev site experience is more ideal for many of those. I mean, of course, there's lots of documentation that can be done on using Sciencebase and that kind of stuff, which we can on. But in terms of documenting entire SDK and examples on how to use things and stuff, yeah, it's got to be somebody who has a developer experience. And the trouble with that is, whenever you have somebody with that developer experience, you're always faced with the choice of, do I get this developer to write documentation, or do I get this developer to develop things? And that's kind of the situation we've been in, where it typically falls on the side of, this developer's time can be spent one or the other way, and it makes more sense if the developer is developing things versus writing documentation. The little bit of a conundrum there, but it's we're thinking if we can get somebody who's good at the actual writing and the documentation, then they can at least do a significant portion of it, even if they have to liaise with a developer to get their questions answered. Then whatever questions they come up with is probably questions that other people are going to have anyway. So it's basically they can put those questions to the developer and then take the answers and actually turn the document rather than the developer having to do all that editing and writing type work stuff. Yeah, there still has to be some developer involvement, or at least or at least somebody who has creator experience using the platform, using our. But at this point, we somebody who can do the dedicated writing part of it. So that's an idea that we're exploring. Yeah, Adam long ago made a post about rewarding people who documented scripts. Yeah, that's actually something we've been talking about because we have a wiki, and we've discussed before the challenges of running a public wiki, in that whatever they put on the wiki still has to be vetted. It has to be people who aren't just developers, but people who are also good writers. Those can be challenging to find together. And then it has to be carefully controlled and gated as to who can access it. And otherwise we spend all of our time scraping spam off the wiki. There are certainly options there, and it's something we've been discussing is back up some kind of creator wiki with a role that says, if you come to us, show us that you have good documentation skills and you know what you're documenting, we can give your account particular access to the write those. But yeah, in terms of like rewarding people who do it, that's certainly a good idea. We'd have to discuss like what those rewards look like. Are we just giving people gold or silver or something for doing it, or some other reward, maybe reward them with a premium account if they do so many articles or something. I don't know. There's certainly lots of options there. But it's again that trouble of finding somebody who has both the knowledge and the time and the skill set to pull all of that together and make a good, functional, readable documentation that's easy to follow and can put together. And it's a big task, and it's one of those things where it's like, okay, we have even a creator in the community is like, I want to contribute. Like, they can write documentation for our wiki, or they can work on their own projects. And so it still comes down to the same problem of splitting that time. Yeah, Gabby's saying, honestly, what I asked for is more input from the developers of the components. Some components have handy tooltips on them, but not all of them. If the components alone had tiny tooltips giving a little hint of what it's for, it already helps. That's absolutely true, Gabby. Unity has a built-in way to put information the inspector. Like if there's a field that needs to be filled in, Unity has a built-in way to put a text box above that field saying this is what this field is for. We do that to some extent, but we obviously don't have that on everything, and that's really something which again comes down to that's basically still a developer writing documentation. It's just that documentation is embedded in the component instead of being on the wiki someplace. Ideally, it would be in both places, but that is even a more limited selection of people, because to make those changes, to add that documentation to those components, is somebody who is an engineer in the company who has access to our internal code base, which is a much smaller group of people even. Like not every employee here has access to the code base. So it's not something like the that's one of our engineers at work, which again it comes right back to does this engineer go through writing documentation, or does this engineer things? And that's always been a priority issue. There's so much going on that the engineers typically get stuck with engineering tasks, not documentation tasks. Gabby says that we document everything here, but sometimes your latest changes or new release components don't really tell what it is for. Yeah, there's also the issue of like, in order to put a component on there, and even if it had that documentation in it, you would have to know that component exists in the first place to be able to add it and go on there. And I think we have a lot of components that are in the SDK that do some really cool stuff, that just nobody knows it's there. It's just not documented. Some of them are not documented well, and some of them are not documented at all, which is why, um, we need we need more dedicated documentation. Focus somebody who's that is their job, and that's something we would really like to improve upon. Monk says need to figure out why the ground in your region turned to pink after updating your viewer from 1B to 2B. We can look at that. Pink usually means that Unity couldn't load the material for the terrain texture for it, and there could be a lot of reasons why that is. If you you say it like it's a problem, yeah, what's wrong with pink terrain? Just go with it. But yeah, if you have a texture that's not showing up, or a mesh or a material that's not showing up properly on a mesh, then let us know. Submit a ticket, or bug one of us, our community staff or developers, and we can that region and figure out what's going on with it. Yeah, it was an issue for Guitar Hollow. Guitar Hollow should be fixed. A lot of that boiled down to substances, actually, and Unity's substance support changed drastically between Unity 2017 and Unity 2018 and later versions. And so that's what happened with Guitar Hollow. It actually happened with a lot of regions. It broke our default home region. It broke our welcome center. And you may be running into the same issue there, where some substances, some SBSR AR files don't play nice with Unity. And the reason for that is 2017 had built-in substance support that was just part of Unity. And Unity 2018, they got rid of that built-in substance support. And so the official way to support substances in your Unity software now is to use a plugin that goes in on top of Unity 20. It's an asset that you've downloaded and install with that. And there's ongoing issues. We're not the only ones having issues with that substance plugin. There's a lot of ongoing issues with that plugin working well with Unity 2018 and later. We're working with them to try and sort out some of those issues, but it means that some substances are hit and miss in Unity. Unfortunately, largely, like I said, it's not software that we've written. It's software that we have to use. So we're trying to work with them to see if we can contribute patches to their software and things like that, maybe help sort out those issues, because it's important for us to have good substance support, and it's something that the plugin seems to be struggling with. Yeah, it's not a problem. It's just not really the right color for the scene. It's just the feng shui is all messed up there. Yeah. So just looking for there's doesn't look like there's a lot of questions coming in on Slido at the moment, so I'm just looking back through the chat log here. If there's any questions, yeah, feel free to throw them in. We got about 28 minutes left here. Yeah, there is some updates. Question, something Karsten mentioned a little farther up. There's some updates to our social media integration that are in progress and coming. And there's some components and some other stuff that goes along with that, like updated features for the actual user interface for that. That's one of those things. Social media integration is kind of a must-have these days. Everybody wants to take pictures and put them on their Instagram and on their Facebook, and it's especially important for anybody who wants to do events in Sciencebase. That's free marketing, and people coming and doing events are like, it's a requirement. I got to have that free marketing to do events here. Yeah, it should be really cool. There's some really cool stuff that's going on with that. One of the things that I can probably tell you about this. One of the things we're working on is when you take a picture of something in Sciencebase, like you capture a snapshot. We're working on the ability for that to capture data about everything that's visible in that scene, is visible in that snapshot, so that when you snapshot of a person or a place or something, then the information about what's in that scene is included with that snapshot, and we can do a bunch of cool stuff in there. Is the code available for this question mark HUD thing at the front? Might be useful for vehicles and other objects. That is, I mean, if you want the code for that, I'm more than happy to give you that, but that is actually the simplest thing in the world. That is a canvas with a browser attached to it. And when you click on the question mark, it just turns the canvas on, sets it active, and the canvas just goes, the browser's just pointed at the Slido website. That's literally all that is. It's just a browser attached to a canvas element. The only code that's involved there is when you click on the question mark and it turns it on. It takes a dynamic URL that we've supplied it and tells the browser, "Hey, go to this URL," which is whatever the current Slido event, and that's literally all that does. But I'm more than happy for you to to have that script if you want it. Speaking of scripts, I should mention, I don't know if they're up yet or not. Let me check here real quick. Richie and I went through a bunch of scripts that I've written over the last months, and so we were talking about adding more example scripts and demo scripts and stuff to our public GitHub. So you should see those coming up as soon as we stop overloading Richie with other things to do. But he will be you should see some new stuff on the GitHub very soon. A bunch of random scripts that I've written over like the last 6 months or so, and so you'll be some stuff going up there. How to work on cameras and a bunch of other fun. Keep an eye on that space. Hopefully by next office hours, we'll have some stuff up there, but it should be up before then as well. Yeah, we really want more example scripts up there. You know, examples how we've done things in Lua, so people can take those apart and really play with those and see examples of how those work.
Yeah, I was listening in the background there, and I'll get those up as soon as I can.
Yeah, I know you've got a ton of other stuff to do, but just wanted to let everybody know that we talked about that at some past office hours, adding more stuff. We are actively working on that. I actually went through digging through my folders on my computer and found some Lua scripts and projects, and there'll be more than just the scripts. There's also prefabs and stuff in there that go with it, or actually Unity packages that you can import that include entire objects, as not just the scripts that go with it. But we'll try and add to that regularly, and we probably I don't know where that GitHub is linked from, but we should probably like pin it in Discord. Like if you add, there's a developer chat in Discord, pin it to the top or something. Discord options has that support, and we should probably make sure it's many places on the wiki so that it's easy, and the knowledge base so that it's easy. Catching up on chat here. Gabby's working on a secret region that she's not telling us about. Artemis says something maintained by Sciencebase, including cool new things in the works, testing things, showcasing the park. So like a region where we actually just update it regularly with new stuff, new examples of stuff. Yeah, that's actually a cool idea. Central Park type sim. A place that showcases what's possible here in Sciencebase. Yeah, I think that would be cool. It's kind of like it'd be kind of like a World's Fair, right? Like you know, there used to be that whole big thing where you know, once a year or whatever, people would gather together in these big events, you know, in big cities and showcase the latest tech. And I think that would be a super cool thing to have. I don't know about reserving events and stuff, but yeah, yeah, we need hosts. Yeah, but no, that's actually a great idea to have. I would love to put together a World's Fair region, and just periodically rotate out functional examples of things working. And they don't even have to be complex examples. there's some really cool stuff you can do very simply if you just know how to put the components together or how to write just a few lines of code. Like over the weekend, I wrote a Lua script for our CEO for a project, and it's like 10 lines of Lua, and all it does is it animator, and it uses your avatar's distance from the object to scrub back and forth the animation. So as you walk towards it, it plays up the animation, and if you walk back, it plays backwards the animation. Your distance from it controls where in the animation it is. Just doing something very simple like that lets you do all sorts of very cool effects. Like you can be walking down the street, approaching something in the distance, and as you do that, the world assembles itself around you according to your avatar moving. Or visual effects happen according to your avatar moving. There's some really cool stuff that can be done. Just a very simple script that hooks into an animator and decides, oh, the animator is controlled by you instead of just playing on its own. And I'd love to have like a World's Fair region where we can put up examples of that and say, this is the power of Unity, this is the power of Sciencebase. Look what you can do with a very simple script, throw some stuff together in an animator, and then you've got this very cool experience for very little effort. Arna says when she was new, you used to go to preview and search by alphabet. Same here on LiveGrid, and discovered some cool places, but ended up leveling off because there were the Sims don't have a lot of interactivity. That is an ongoing struggle. Is we've talked about in past office hours is people who can script is a much smaller pool of people than people who can build, and so you end up with people who do a lot of building, but the building ends up being fairly static because they don't know how to make it interactive. And I agree. I would love to I mean, those tools are there, just people don't necessarily know how to use them. And there's a lot of stuff that's built into the SDK for making stuff interactive that you don't even to script for. That's kind of what our thing is. Is like, we have all these components specifically so you can make interactive stuff without scripting. But I think people are maybe intimidated by it. They like we mentioned, they add a component to there, but they're not quite sure how to set it up, and they're having trouble finding documentation. And again, that's totally us. We need our documentation. But I agree that having a region where people can go and just experience different kinds of interactivity, kind of like a virtual fidget spinner, a region that's like one of those, or not a fidget spinner, but one of those little fidget boxes that you see. It's got like buttons and knobs and dials and different sorts of little things on it that you can play with that don't do anything, but you can play with them and then get a feel for it. I would love to have a region like that where you just go and go, oh, here's something cool we're doing with a proximity sensor. Here is something cool that we're doing with an animator that you don't have to do scripting for. Things like that would be great. Yeah, that's absolutely true. If it's someone's first virtual world, then they don't necessarily have an idea of what they could or should be doing with it. And a lot of that comes down to just artistic inspiration. People have ideas of, oh, it'd be fantastic if this did that, but then they don't know how to implement it. They don't know how to make that work. They don't even know if it's possible to make that work. So yeah, a region showcasing this isn't just possible, it's simple. Boom. Like Ivory Towers. Yeah, Ivory Towers was a fantastic resource for many years. And something like that in science would be very cool to have. I would love to be able to put that together. Well, it's something I'll float around internally and see if we can, it might be interesting. Maybe we should, if we could have a community contest or something for people to build the region, and that way we don't have to put take some of our people off onto building it. Maybe we could turn it into one of our community contests or something, or we may end up just throwing together something internally. But I think it'd be really cool if it was also had that community contribution to it. We'll explore ideas on that, a World's Fair type region / Ivory Towers type region. examples of materials in the region. Yeah, that's not a bad idea either. If you just had like swatches, like this is using standard shader, this is using unlit shader, this one has a normal map and this one doesn't. Those kind of basic instructional things are great to have. You can't really you can do something similar on like a web page. You can have screenshots and gifs and stuff like that, but it's not really the same thing as being able to like walk around it and see how the light plays off of it yourself. So yeah, some of that kind of stuff would be really fun to have and really simple to have too. Footfalls in the region. People want footstep sounds. Yeah, that's something that we've actually talked about recently for a particular project is material attenuated footfall sounds, which is something it's been on our list for a while. It's just one of those things where we'd have to it's where is it priority wise, and then would have to regions would have to have that component added to them. We could make a default footfall sound, but that could be quite annoying. Yeah, yeah. Again, another case of it. Stuff exists that nobody knows about because there's their documentation. We really should just have someplace like a list of like, here's every component in the SDK, brief description of what it does, and ideally click on it to get more information kind of thing. There's just so much in there. But again, this just comes back to what we were talking about earlier. It's like, somebody has to dig through there and do that documentation, and that means that's time they're spending doing that versus something else, which is why I really want to have a dedicated documentation. And that would be one of their first tasks is, because if we're bringing somebody in order to do that documentation, they would have to be familiar with the SDK themselves, right? So what better way to get familiar with the SDK than just going through there and listing out every single component that's in there, and that way they have a list that they're working from, and they can look at it and go, this one's done, this one isn't, and let's pick one and do that one today and get it done. Creator of the component has to send out that list. I'm not sure what you mean by that. The components are written by many different people over many different years, and the person who wrote the component doesn't necessarily have to be the person who documents it. In some cases, that person may or may not even be in the company anymore. It depends on who wrote it and how long ago. So, and a lot of the components that are in there, they're either building on or they're just standard Unity components that people don't know about. So that's one of the things I would like to have some more documentation. Like, yeah, this is just how you use the animator component. We didn't write that. Even if we're just linking to some kind of outside Unity tutorial resource for that, we should be. We can't just have a list of our components, because while that's useful, a lot of those components are only in conjunction with something else, and those something else is usually a Unity standard feature that we're just building on top of. Yeah, I think the documentation person needs access to the developers, to the engineers, if they can't figure out how a component works, and then an engineer can explain to them. But I don't think the engineer themselves needs to be the one doing all the documentation. Yeah, and a lot of the important bits are in Unity tutorials, things like the animators and cause all that's just stuff. And the animator is incredibly powerful, and it can be also very intimidating. And a lot of people don't necessarily understand that, like, animating isn't just making your avatar dance and walk. Animating can do anything in the scene. Animating is basically taking any value on any component on any object and adjusting that value up and down based on some criteria, whether that's just playing through a timeline or like I mentioned earlier, like your avatar's proximity. Basically, all it's doing is taking any value on any component, on any object, and moving that value up and down, which sounds overly simplistic, but that's what it's doing. I mean, when you talk about like animations, like animating your avatar, that's just a rotation of the arm bone changing over a period of time. That's all that the animating is. But that can be applied to anything. Super powerful. You can do really cool interactive, stuff with it, but you got to know how that works. And so, all of our stuff that ties into and uses the animator is useless if people don't know how to use the animator itself. Is 1B44 welcome? I'm not sure what what the question is. Welcome on what? 1B44 is hopefully going away entirely soon.
That was for me. Sorry. And
Oh,
yes,
okay.
Jamie, you can come.
Oh, yes.
Please do. Please do.
No, we're not excluding people using the 1B viewer from anything. It's just we're hoping that nobody will have to use the 1B viewer much longer.
We're gonna run a test at Ziggy's on some animations and stuff, and I was just asking in chat for volunteers.
Gotcha. That's good. And Gabby's absolutely right here. She says a big question floating around is having better quality hair, like hair not looking smooth, and like it's plasticky or something. But and people are blaming, like, oh, Sciencebase, why don't they improve their hair? Well, we don't make all of the hair. The hair that's in the store is made by a bunch of different people, and that is entirely up to people who make that hair, to understand how shaders work and to use a good hair shader and to be and to have that skill or know where to go looking for those. You can upload any shader you want to as part of your hair, and that's entirely the person who made that hair. If they're just not experienced and they don't understand how shaders work, then they're probably going to upload their hair with the standard shader, which is designed for solid objects, not wispy hair. And so it may not look great. And we can't and wouldn't mandate that all hair use a particular shader, because that's both a technical hurdle and also, why would we limit everybody's creativity that way? But it's very much, if you want to make hair, part of learning how to make good hair is, learning how to either make or source good hair shaders. And that's a big challenge with, like, if you want to make something that's got like fur or fuzz on it, that typically uses a different shader than something that's a solid object. Like that's just a 3D development skill, not something unique to Sciencebase. But it would be nice if we had at least somewhere we could point people like, hey, do you want to make hair? That's we're not doing anything special. You just need a good shader. But let's talk about shaders. Let's point you to some where you can find shaders or learn about those. Yeah, that's good to know. Gabby says she's got some hair coming out with a new shader. That would be a great example to show people as well. Yeah, shaders can be complicated. Shaders are complicated to write, but even just using somebody's pre-written shader sometimes can be confusing. But it's one of those things where, like, if you're using somebody else's shader, then you're gonna have to, and you're having trouble with that, then that's something you're gonna have to ask them about, like, because they wrote the shader. There's tons of shaders and stuff on the Unity Asset Store. There's shaders out there in the wild. So find shaders even if you want to write your own. And if they're on the Asset Store, they've at least got some documentation or some developer support as well. Yeah, I believe Zulaine here actually writes shaders themselves, and that's a rare talent. We don't have a lot of people who can actually build shaders, so maybe call them if you need a custom shader made. Just make sure you charge them for it. We've got about 7 minutes left here, so if anybody got you can pay him with hugs if that's a currency that he accepts. It may not work for everybody, but we've got about 7 minutes left here. So if anybody has any other questions they wanna throw out there, drop them in Slido or drop them in chat. I think it would be a topic we're going backwards a little bit here to a previous talk about interactive regions. I think it would be useful if maybe we could categorize regions in the future, because there are some regions that are just meant to be pretty, they're art regions, but I think it'd be useful if like our featured regions tab or something could say here's some cool interactive regions versus here's some cool just regions that are great for taking photos in or whatever because they're so pretty. So yeah, maybe having some better categorization there might help people find things that are more suited to what they're looking for. If you're looking for cool interactivity, it'd be nice if we had a way to say, oh, these are specifically interactive regions. But again, that's relying on the people who made those regions to actually make them interactive in the first place. Scrolling up here to see if I've missed any questions recently. What should you look at to get your ground back to normal? Any suggestions, Monk? Well, that's going to be, like I said, it's more than likely. We have to know if are you using substances. If you're using a substance, you might be better off replacing that substance with a standard material, and that could fix your problem. Or maybe adjusting the substance could fix it. It's really not something that I can give you a specific answer on without looking at the specific problem because every substance is different. Yeah, that's very true, Gabby. We have our share of things that we broke or we haven't fully implemented yet, or features that are on the back burner that we keep meaning to get to but get deprioritized. But fundamentally, Sciencebase is a creator platform. Creators are here putting their content up, and so if there's a problem with a particular item, unless it says made by the Sciencebase team, then that item was made by somebody else, and if there's a problem with it, it's if think it's low quality or it's broken or there's some other issue with it, then it's probably something you need to approach that creator about. That creator might be new, they might be learning, they might not know about shaders yet, and they're working on their skill set, improving their skills. Everybody's got to start somewhere, right? So there's no one creator for everything, and there's no we review things for whether they're like going to be dangerous or malicious or copyright infringing, that kind of thing. But we don't say everything has to be AAA quality or we're not going to allow it on the grid, because that's not what virtual worlds like these are about. So just have to know what you're buying and know that who you're buying it from. I mean, Jamie says we usually do not know who made something and no way to learn who on our own. I mean, when you buy something from the store, you know who you're buying it from. The person who created that is on that listing. Every item says made by, and it's got a brand name and creator attached to it. Yeah, it just that's the brand name on it, is the shop name. And users can have different brands on the same account. It's not one brand per account. So yeah, you may find an item if they don't. I'm looking now at the store here, seeing if like they do have the brands on them, but if they don't have the actual creator name on there, then maybe that's something that we need to add on there. But it's true that if you don't know who you bought it from, or if you don't know who to contact for support, then that could be an ongoing issue.
You can contact this Digvijay. You can contact via support to us, and we will find out which creator made it and check with the creator what the issue is.
That's maybe a system we need to think about improving, or maybe having a way like on the item listing you can have like a feedback form or something where if you click on that and click it, then it automatically sends a mail to the creator, even if we're not exposing the creator's name there, it's very common to have a way to say message the creator of this item, whoever that is, and they get a mail show up or something. I don't know that it's
But
necessarily.
Joshua, we provide the support for the creators. Sorry to contradict that. So
Okay.
it's easy. Yeah.
Let's
There are
assume
lots of creators that may not be active that we will be able to contact. So it's better if they just submit a support ticket to us.
Okay, that's something we can talk about internally as far as policy goes. We may need to think about having other support options as well, but that's something we'll have to have an internal discussion about and decide what the best course of action is there. So we've got like 2 minutes left here. If anybody wants to throw any last minute questions at us. Yeah, that's always an issue. Artemis is, when people do know who the creator is, then that creator is going to get a lot of people messaging them. And I know from my own personal experience that a lot of those messages can be frustrating for the creator, just because creators often get messages that are the user may think is related to their product, but is really a platform or issue. So it's like, hey, I encountered this problem. It's like, well, that's not a problem with my item. That's, you don't know how to use the platform, and creators will often find themselves having to essentially teach people how to use the platform in order for that person to be able to use the product that they bought, which can be very frustrating and time consuming. Yeah, and it can also lead to increased sales if people feel like they have that support and that access to the developer, in order to boost confidence in buying that item. If things are a black box, then people may feel like, oh, if I have a problem with this, there's no way I'm going to get support for it. So I'm just gonna go get something else. But there's certainly a balance there that has to be played with and strike a nice balance somewhere. Yeah, it's not a bad idea if we provide a place where creators, as part of their brand, specifically list customer service information if they want to, like a customer service email, or if they do want to put their name on there, then give them that option or something. And that may be a good solution to have. The default is, you only put out there what you want out there. And if you want to provide a customer service email, if you want to provide other means to contact you, then you can. But if you don't, then it goes through our normal system. So that's something we'll talk about internally and see if there's it makes sense to enable something like that to give more direct access to creators for creators who want that. Okay, so we're over the time here, over the hour now, and unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier, I have to run off to something else. I've got another meeting that's directly after this one, so I can't run overtime here too much. So thank you everyone for coming to office hours today, and hopefully, I'm hoping next week we'll be able to have some really good news for the two, and then after that we can start moving on to doing some more really cool stuff, less general Q&A, more focused stuff for future. I'm really excited about that. Everyone have a great week and a great weekend, and we'll see you next week.